Well, Estevan is on the front line of the energy transition. It is home to one of the last coal-powered plants in Canada. And with the federal government's goal of transitioning away from coal energy by 2030, Estevan is looking for other industries that will drive the local economy. Our guests today hope that technology and rural innovation can be part of the answer the community is looking for. So today on Blue Sky, we'll hear from some of the people leading that conversation in Estevan, and we want to hear from you too. If you live in rural Saskatchewan, what innovations have you seen that have boosted the local economy? You can call 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Well, Gordon Moore hasn't lived in Estevan very long, but he is committed to using his tech skills to help out his new home. Gordon is the executive director of the Southeast Tech Hub, and he's one of the organizers of the Innovation Conference for Economic Development in Rural Areas. Gordon, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thank you for having me.
I want a bit of context. What brought you to Estevan in the first place?
Oh, boy. There was that time a few years ago that we all went through and made us reevaluate our lives.
That time, yes.
Yeah, that time. So I had co-founded a software company in 2006 in Vancouver called IDS Internet Dispatch Services. And I had come to the conclusion I didn't have the energy to take it out of the pit of that time, that we needed someone with new energy. At the same time, my wife is originally from Iran and is a family doctor. And Saskatchewan offered her a job, and we said, yeah, let's go and figure it out. And the way it works for rural doctors, when you're a foreign doctor, you don't choose your town. The government does. Then they chose Estevan, which is really funny because my great-grandfather is buried here. My family actually paused in Estevan, moving from Ontario to BC. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Interesting to have that connection. So you're there, and you were not going to work, right? But now you find yourself with some interests and expertise that you feel like you can contribute in a way to what Estevan is going through right now. So tell us about that aspect of it.
Okay, so reevaluating my life, I had always done videography and photography on the side since, I had a darkroom, black and white, running Ilford, in the 80s. And I had been doing that on the side. I have some credits with National Geographic, and I did a video for the UNESCO World Biosphere Zone in Howe Sound. I've done all these wonderful things, but I never really gave time to seeing if I could do it professionally. So that was my goal. Then so when I got here, though, I needed to keep running the company while we transitioned to a new president. And so I was looking for an office. Long story short, I found the Tech Hub. There's some TikToks in there, but I'll just leave it at that.
So what is the Tech Hub?
So the Tech Hub was created by the community to look at innovation and technology to help diversify the economy. As Mayor Roy Ludwig had said, is that a lot of our industry is boom and bust, oil and gas. And so he wanted to, he and the city council and the community wanted to find a new industry that could help take those peaks out. And if you're rebuilding your community after this change, makes sense. And so a couple of the city staff had gone up and seen Cultivator, which is a tech incubator in Regina, and were really impressed, and they wanted to replicate that here. So I ended up getting a job here, or an office here. And the cool part, and I think this speaks to a lot of the passion I have for this, is that the grade 8 students from St. Mary's Elementary, did a pitch competition. And the pitch competition, and they asked me to judge, and it was so cool. And there was these two girls young women who took the soil sample or moisture sensor and put it into pot plants. And the idea being that when you came home, when you came home from work, Alexa or Siri would tell you, hey, you need to go water that plant. And it just, that connection, that creativity just really hit me. And I realized at that time in Estevan, there was no place for them to go to continue on with their journey. And the world needs more young women, and technology needs more rural innovation. And they needed more to happen. So at that time, I went and talked to the city and said, hey, I want to help out. So I changed courses and became the executive director of the Tech Hub.
Tech Hub. Okay, I think that's such a great example of those grade 8 students. Who else are you bringing together in that Tech Hub that could help Estevan as a whole? Because I think there's a couple of interesting things at play here. Like, you're bringing together smart minds, they're creating new things, but the fact that this is all happening in Estevan is a really important piece to that. But just first off, who are you bringing together in that Tech Hub? What's the point?
And thank you for bringing that up, because sometimes when people get to know what I'm doing here, they put me, and it's not me, it's the community. So it's the entire community coming together. It's people like Tanya at Southeast College, who you hear from in a minute, who helped create the Center for Sustainable Innovation. She'll talk more about that within the college, and help to bring in more computer science back into our community, because frankly, it's 2024, not 1954. We have a wonderful teacher, Steve Elton, at the Comp, who has championed computer science there. And he went out and learned JavaScript on his own. I'm sure Jeff Sanquist, who you'll hear from in a minute, will agree that's not an easy task for someone to do, and he's really doing that. We're also reaching out to people outside of our community, because there is a lot of expertise out there, especially south of the border. So we're also working with Professor Michael Wagner out of the University of George Washington, who's been working on turning we like to call it lignite biomass, because technically that is what it is, not coal. Turning that into graphite for batteries. And we're working with a company called Hydrogen Principia and Gen H2 out of the US to gasify the lignite into hydrogen. And it would be clean, because it would be the emissions would be sequestered underground. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. So that is a good example, I think, of what you're trying to get at here, because it's 2024 in Estevan, and things are shifting. There is a transition taking place. Some people are open to it. Other people are reluctant. But why is this kind of tech innovation so important in a place like Estevan?
If you look at the way, like innovation, another word I like to use, which is more representative of what innovation is disruption. Right? Because you're altering a process to make something better. You're disrupting it. And a lot of the world has gone through that disruption in the past already. So banking, that kind of stuff, that's all already happened. And now it's hitting our rural communities. Agriculture and energy generation are some of the biggest areas that are currently feeling disruption. And if anyone who's listening to this, whatever, if you're on the phone, the radio, the car, if you follow that energy that is helping you hear me talk, it is coming from a rural community, no matter where you are in the world, unless you have a solar panel on your roof in your apartment in the city. So this disruption's hitting us hard. The other thing is our motto for our city is the energy city, right? So we are already the experts in energy. So why are so many decisions about the disruption caused by the energy transition happening in places outside of our community? We have the expertise within our community to stop being the disrupted and start being the disruptors. So that's kind of the theory of all of that part.
And we're about to introduce people to Tanya, who you mentioned, but that description that you just gave, is that the spark for this conference? Because the reason we're talking to you today is because of this conference that you're part of. Yeah. So tell me about that.
There's more to it. Stanford University did an amazing study on where does innovation originate? Where does the creativity of new ideas come from? And they took an AI language model and they dumped in all this information from Congress, from operations in the innovation industry. And what they discovered, the AI showed them, is that innovation happens on the outside, not in the core. So if you translate that, innovation happens not in city centers. We think of it happening in city centers because that's where it gets commercialized. But the original idea, a lot of the time, is sparked in rural communities. And why is that? Well, because in rural communities, you must be self-sufficient and you must rely on yourself. You think about Estevan, we're 2.5 hours away from Regina. We're on our own. So if you're a farmer, you're working in an oil and gas, you're a coal miner, something happens, you can't do what I used to do in Vancouver, is call up someone and say, help me. You have to solve that problem yourself. So you become an innovator in solving your problems. You're also, to be an innovator, you must be resilient. You hear that word a lot. So resilient means if you're going to disrupt something, you have to be able to take that's going to come your way from people who don't like you making that change. And if you look at rural communities, they're used to it. I mean, I've seen it. I know I'm originally from Vancouver, but what I've quickly seen over the past 2 years is how resilient this community is. And the final point I'll say on that is we had Dr. Eric Grimson, former chancellor from MIT, from 2014 to 2019, now chancellor of academia. He's from Estevan, as is Jeff, who you'll hear from in a minute. Mm-hmm. And he started off this whole thing 2 years ago. He came out, flew out from Boston, and did a presentation. And he said, if he had a student from Boston with the exact same academic score as a student from Beanfate, which is just outside of Estevan, population 200, and the same score, he would always take the student from Beanfate because they're resilient. So the tagline for the conference is innovation, real innovation. It's already who we are. And I would promote the premise to everyone listening that for our community and for society, we need to tap more into this real innovation and stop pushing it to the side. So that's my goal with this conference, is to bring people together and see how innovative we are.
Okay. That's a great introduction. So let's go to one of the folks that you'll be hearing more from, Tanya Lahovsky-Andrist. And so, Tanya, I'd like to bring you into the conversation today. You are the Executive Director of Innovation and Applied Research with the Center of Sustainable Innovation at Southeast College in Estevan. Tanya, welcome to Blue Sky.
Hello, and nice to talk with you. And tough act to follow there, Mr. Gord Moore, because of his enthusiasm for what we're doing here.
Absolutely. I'm assuming, though, you're just as enthusiastic based on what I've heard from other folks. So the big question that we're asking today is how is Estevan going to transition away from being a community that's fueled by the coal economy, right? Like that's kind of at the heart of like when Gord talks about innovation, disruption, there is a disruption. So how are you navigating those conversations? What conversations are taking place right now in your community?
Well, I think Gord really started it with talking about whether it's the initiation of this conference or talking about the level of investment and the vested interest of our community leadership and the people who are involved in the community. When, again, so Gord has his origin story for the Tech Hub and his relationship with the Tech Hub, which had already been established by the Innovation Council and the people and the leaders in our community. And at the same time, there was a real push at the college just to do something really transformational here. And because of this energy, the energy transition, to center it at the Estevan campus. And so we initiated the Center of Sustainable Innovation just after actually having some community consultations about how a successful community who has transitioned or who is undergoing something really significant, again, significant growth, that they have a really thriving applied research at their regional, at their local college. And so it speaks to a lot of the same themes that Gord spoke to. We don't want to send our children and our academics to Regina or to Saskatoon up to Sask Polytech. We have a lot of the same resources here. We have the capacity, but we're smaller. And so for us, when you say, how are we going to change things? Well, we have a great community investment. And number two, we have this real need, and again, our backs are against the wall, to build a foundation here. And sometimes when we get together in these innovation sessions, we start talking about, again, whether it's the SMRs coming or one of these big economic development initiatives coming. We're not talking about, Estevan's going to, lose their coal mine and their possibly one power plant, and then we won't have, we're going to be a dying community. No, there is a conversation of like, it'll be great when we have, thousands more people living here, because this is a thriving and really active community. And that's the positivity. And that's again, a real sense of being vested in what happens to our community.
Yeah, you mentioned SMRs, small modular reactors, and I can understand the energy felt within the college, but the larger community, is there that openness to transitioning, Tanya?
Again, I think there's been, and I've lived here now just over 21 years. And so there was a time pre-COVID, mid 2015, 2017, where there was not a sense of optimism about, there was just this looming deadline. And I think it really spurred activity, and it spurred a real energy. And now since the community, and again, I guess we're locking on 8 years later, the energy, the feeling within the community is different, because we want to move forward. And again, I think it is that resilience. It's that same theme, right? This is not a community that's going to just, well, I guess we'll go get another job. And certainly some people will. Some people will go get a different job in a coal mine in a different part of Saskatchewan. And that's okay too, because then that means their house will be for sale for the new academics and the new engineers that will be moving here, right? That's the way we have to react, that sense of resilience. So is there resistance? Of course there is. This is a rural Saskatchewan community, but is there also a sense of hope and optimism? And we are the masters of our fate when we can do that. Yeah, I think that's there too.
Gord, what's it been like for you sharing this message of innovation and even of hope, as Tanya describes? When I first looked at the conference lineup, it wasn't clear to me, and I'll be honest, that that this had anything to do with energy transition, or response to a changing climate. This looks like a tech conference. Was that intentional, Gord, or how are you doing at selling the message to the wider community?
Yeah, you nailed it. The impetus to make this happen is the coal mine to shut down. Estevan could shut down, or possibly will. Estevan already had this in it. And it can already thrive with or without it. So I'm more focused on that piece. We have such a natural resource of innovators that we need to really focus and get that. And that's where I'm coming from, exactly.
So Tanya, tell me about some of the innovation that you're seeing at the college. What are maybe some examples of things that are coming across your desk?
Well, the primary, what we're going to be showcasing at the conference is our new pilot program for computer science training through projects. And again, just a testament to this community collaborative spirit and partnership with recognizing that computer science was a real deficit in the Southeast. And if basically that grade 12 class that Mr. Elton teaches, and there was no post-secondary. And so because of our rural, and people who work in rural education or at the regional colleges know that sometimes we can't support these bigger 2-year programs that have, this constant need for enrollment. But we absolutely have a need. And so we received a proposal from our instructor, and we did quite a bit of work here to develop the pilot to computer science training through projects, where the students take on, it's like their own tech project and their own tech company they're joining. And so you have a community partner or an industry partner. In this case, it is the Tech Hub, and we'll be demonstrating the project. And it was a networking app that our students developed over the summer, so that when you come to a conference, you network with people. We use an AI model to put people together during networking breaks so that they can meet new and fresh people that they might not realize that they have commonalities with. And so then these students, not only do they learn some basic programming skills or whatever skill they need to, it's highly personalized. They also have project now experience for their portfolios, which hopefully Jeff will explain to us that, this changing economy, it's not always about your 4-year computer science degree that might be dusty. They actually need to produce documented portfolios that show that they worked on projects. And so we're really trying to, again, move forward with these 21st century skills and attract students, train them, retain them here in our community, and then build programming from there. We're always looking for project partners. Sorry to interrupt, Alicia.
No,
We're
it's
looking for project partners.
You're good at foreshadowing. You mentioned Jeff. So, Jeff, we will be introducing people to Jeff Sandquist. He's the keynote speaker at this conference in Estevan. So, Jeff, hang tight. I can see you on the screen, and we're going to get to you in a little bit. I'm Leisha Grabinski. You are listening to Blue Sky. Today, we're talking to one of the organizers of the Innovation Conference for Economic Development in Rural Areas. This is Gordon Moore. He's also the executive director of Southeast Tech Hub. And we're also chatting with Tanya Lochovsky-Andrist, the executive director of Innovation and Applied Research with the Center of Sustainable Innovation at Southeast College in Estevan. We have a couple more guests to introduce you to, but before we say goodbye to Tanya, any final words that you'd like to share? That networking app is a great example. That sounds very cool. What else excites you at the college right now?
I started to speak, Leisha, about partnerships. And so we also have, again, quite a significant solar installation coming to our community as part of a SaskPower agreement. And so this company has partnered with us, and we're going to be doing some applied research with them. This is the idea, again, how we can become more sustainable as a college and as a community by diversifying and by really building those energy partnerships. So I think we're only at the onset in our community. And again, there is a lot of optimism and again, a lot of community collective kind of will to kind of master this situation that we're in. And it's been really a great experience to be part of it and to watch it. I mean, you talk about grassroots, you talk about being able to, affect your what's your future through municipal initiatives. This is a real living, breathing example.
It's been great talking to you, Tanya. Thank you so much for being part of the show today.
You're welcome. Thank you for saying my title 4 times.
It's a big title. It's an important title. I'm going to say it again, Tanya.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Tanya Lochovsky-Andrist, Executive Director of Innovation and Applied Research with the Center of Sustainable Innovation at Southeast College in Estevan. Now, our next guest grew up in Estevan. He now lives in Regina, but he's using his tech skills to try and help people in his home community. Andrew Waba is the executive director of Tech Career Bridge, but he's received money through the Municipal Coal Transition Assistance Program to be able to use his program to help people looking for careers outside of coal. Andrew is one of the people presenting at the Rural Innovation Conference in Estevan this week, but today he is in our Regina studio. Andrew, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Tell us about this program you've created. What is it? How does it work?
Yeah, so Tanya and Gord touched a lot about the change in Estevan, and one of the things is for the individuals. How can they participate in this? And sometimes it feels a little overwhelming on, what are all these opportunities? I've been working at the mine for 20 years. How am I going to transition to a new job? So what we really look at is helping individuals and support them with identifying the transferable skills that they have and comparing those to jobs that are available in the community or could be available in the community, and then providing them with pathways, personalized pathways to continue to build on the skills they've already acquired and get themselves in a position so that they can be ready for the jobs of the future.
I could see how this could apply to so many jobs. I mean, even mine as a journalist and how much our jobs have shifted. But is there something quite unique to people who are working in the coal industry, oil and gas, where it's a challenge to see how those skills are transferable? Do you find yourself having pep talks with people like, yes, you have skills, yes, they can be used elsewhere?
Yeah, I think you hit that on the head. I mean, it's a concept that can be applied to anybody's job. And in just life in general, we acquire a lot of skills that we're not really aware of from leadership, for example. I mean, we have a life outside of work. So from volunteering and from community involvement and from everything. So we take that holistic perspective of an individual and then try to pull out all the skills that they would acquire in those situations. And you're right, like people, I was talking to a friend of mine down in Estevan. He's been at the mine for 20 years, and he said, I don't even know where to start. I've never thought of this before. I don't know what a transferable skill is. It's really hard for people to think about that. And then technology, we leverage technology, and it's really good at pulling out those skills that you would have acquired in the roles that you have completed. So, yeah.
I can just imagine it's a terrifying prospect if you've only worked at one place your entire life, right? If that's kind of all you know, it can be very challenging to think of what else is out there for you.
Yeah, it's absolutely daunting. And I think that's one thing that we try to do is provide that support. From identifying those skills to potential opportunities to the training and the pathway of how you can get there. And we support through that whole process. And just want to, provide some optimism and that there is a lot of opportunities and help them navigate that pathway.
So yeah, how do you help people navigate that pathway? Because it's one thing to find out how your skills are transferable, but if you need to go back to school or, that can be a daunting pathway. So how do you support people?
Yeah, so there's a few different components. The first one is to identify first those transferable skills that an individual has, and then compare them on the other side to the careers that are out there or the jobs, and pulling out those skills and seeing where there is that match. And then the next piece is that pathway, and there could be different pathways depending on what an individual wants. So it's highly personalized. We've talked to Tanya at the college. There's a lot to leverage what they offer there in terms of training if individuals are on that pathway. But we've also partnered with LinkedIn Learning because they have a real great library of courses that are available through remote learning and certifications, and they're all job-specific skills. So you talked earlier, somebody mentioned about the four-year degree and how that sets you up for a career. But this is more about those individual job-related skills that can get you in a better position to get that next job. So that's really what we're focused on. But then there is that opportunity as well to partner with community colleges and different organizations, whatever parts of the education that need to be filled in on that pathway.
You made me think of something that maybe I wasn't thinking about when I talked with Tanya. I don't know if Tanya is still on the call, but yeah, clearly many of the students at your college wouldn't just be coming out of high school. They could be in their 40s or 50s. Is that true, Tanya, that it's a range of ages, right?
That's absolutely true. It's adult education at whatever level. And again, it's great to hear Andrew on the call because we have a terrific partnership with Tech Career Bridge as well.
So what's that like, Tanya, for people to be going back to school when maybe they hadn't expected to be going back to school later in life?
I honestly think that's a better question for Andrew because he's been working with those individuals. We have, a variety of students and a variety of different projects. But in this, I think it's better for Andrew to respond to that.
Okay, take it away, Andrew.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? And everybody's an individual and has their own perspective on it. I mean, this idea now of being a lifelong learner, especially in the tech space, is something that you have to have because there's always new technology. Jeff can talk about this in depth. I mean, there's always new technologies that are coming out, and you just have to learn those new skills and do micro-credentialing and do different courses. And sometimes it's watching YouTube videos and just learning those skills that'll help you do that next job that is required from you in your workplace. It's a lot different than mine, and this was an opportunity, and I was really happy that SEP saw this vision of trying to support people because it will be a lot different for that 20-year employee from the mine or people that have been in the job for a long time that haven't really explored this idea. So you definitely have to have that openness to and that vulnerability to try something new and throw yourself into it and try to learn new skills for that transition.
Yeah, and thinking about networking and how much networking takes place online, I've got a note here in my background about LinkedIn. And so, Andrew, I might get you to talk about that. Just how important is LinkedIn? How do you connect? Just what's the connection there?
Yeah, so there's kind of two ways to go. With us, with LinkedIn Learning, it is that catalog of courses. But just LinkedIn is this professional hub. And I think now, anytime anybody sends, so for our company or for most professionals, if a resume is sent in, the first thing you do is go to LinkedIn and to look at somebody's background. And so it's really important to have that professional profile up there and to showcase your skills because that really becomes what people are looking at from an employer's perspective. But the other piece of that is just from that connectivity. And Gord, he moved to Estevan a couple of years ago now, but he threw himself into the Saskatchewan innovation ecosystem, and I'm sure that he relied on that database that's on LinkedIn to reach out to everybody and connect because I've seen him at every conference for the last few years and really leveraged that and has done a great job to connect. So it is really important from a networking perspective and building those relationships, which is really important in that transition to new jobs, especially in a community like Estevan or in a place like Saskatchewan. Those relationships are really a key component in transitioning.
Andrew, just a few more questions for you because I'm wondering how much this might cost a person, I guess, to use what you've created, but then also you're paying probably to go back to school. And are most people able to stay in Estevan? Those are some things that come to mind for me. Yeah,
those are good questions. So SEP has provided funding to sponsor 30 people to go through this program that we have. And within that funding, we've working with LinkedIn Learning to have that credentialing as well. So the idea of the whole intent, especially from Estevan's perspective, is to keep people employed in the community, giving them opportunities in the community. So that's something that we want to really focus on and identifying those opportunities that are there that they can transition to.
Gord, you've been nodding along this whole time. And so what's going through your mind as you hear Andrew talk about this?
Oh, it just nails so many things. Well, the part about the networking, kudos to Saskatchewan. So we also, my software company has an office in Australia and we do a lot of business in the States. And when I first came here and started networking, the energy and excitement that is in Saskatchewan really is unmatched. And what I mean by that is like, I was going at it in 1999, 2000, 2001 during the dot-com, before the dot-bomb. And that same kind of excitement is what I feel when I go to a Cultivator or a Collabs. Those are the conventions here for startups. It's the same thing. And it's not just from those like Andrew who are creating new software programs. It's also from those who are in Saskatchewan who want to now invest in that. And it's really exciting. And then also the provincial space. Like we have a whole ministry of innovation Saskatchewan. Like that to me is pretty amazing. Yeah. But I also nodding my head with regards to keeping people within our community. And when my stepdaughter, she came with us here and she graduated. And when I watched her graduate and they announced all the students and what they're going to do next, 40% of them were doing some kind of technology. And all of them had to leave Estevan. So what are we saying? And that's not just like, that's going to be true for every rural community. What we're saying is we can't teach you the skills that you want. Or we also saying, once you get the skills, we want you back. And so when Andrew said, let's teach people new skills, let's teach them in our community so that they can stay in the community that they want to. And there's a lot of people like me who don't want to pay $4,000 to $10,000 a month on housing in a city that is overpopulated and extremely grumpy. We would prefer to live in Estevan. Mm-hmm. So, there's a fantastic opportunity here because of that event a few years ago. The world's changed. And people can run a software company or a technology company in Estevan, in Weyburn, in,
Bean Fate,
Yorkton, all of these places, man.
Yeah. Andrew, I just want to ask you one last question. Do you have a really concrete example of what someone transitioned to? So we've been talking kind of broadly about tech. There's lots of jobs in tech and, just what are your transferable skills? Could you work in leadership? But do you have a really specific example? This person did X and then through your program, they're heading towards Y or whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, we don't have a concrete example right now from our program because we're just launching it down in Estevan. But one that really stuck with me was when I was talking to a friend of mine who worked at LinkedIn, and they were talking about during COVID and the all these service industries shutting down. And what they saw on LinkedIn, because they have all the data where people were and where they go to, they saw that a lot of people that were servers were moving to tech jobs, and they were moving to tech jobs as customer support people, so the people that you call and that will help you. And so what the transferable skills were there were that ability to work with people and having that empathy and being able to communicate. And so, but I'm going to assume that if you talk to a lot of servers, they don't see themselves as having an opportunity to work in the tech field. So that's part of what we want to focus on, is really introducing new opportunities to people that they wouldn't have thought of, that their transferable skills will lead them to. So
interesting. Interesting. I find that so interesting.
Yeah, and so we're really excited about all the opportunities because we know that the advancements of AI and that technology has really opened up the doors to really looking at doing skill matching to opportunities in completely different ways. So we're pretty excited because, like you said at the beginning, there's so many opportunities, and Estevan is kind of a pilot project for us to really dig in and see how we can help people down this pathway.
AI, you're going to start me on what are my transferable skills if AI takes over my job. But someone who's immersed in a lot of this stuff is our next guest. So you were just hearing from Andrew Waba, Executive Director of Tech Career Bridge. He was in our Regina studio. But perhaps the biggest name at this Rural Innovation Conference is Jeff Sandquist. Jeff was raised in the Estevan area and has gone on to make a name for himself in the tech world. He's currently Vice President of Product at Automatic, the company behind WordPress. Before joining Automatic, Jeff held senior roles at Microsoft, and Jeff is going to be the keynote speaker at the ICE conference in Estevan this week, and he is on the line now to tell us more. He's also been listening. Did you ever think people would talk about Estevan in this way?
I always hope so. I am who I am because I came from Saskatchewan, and just good afternoon to the province. I grew up in Estevan. It's kind of weird to think about being called back and different things. A bit of a hometown hero thing is what people said to me. I grew up in the area. I grew up in southern Saskatchewan, farming community of Benson. My family moved to Estevan, and I am who I am because I came from that city. Saskatchewan is a tremendous export of talent. We again and again, I'm sure every week on your news broadcast, I'm in the Seattle areas where we live, my family. Our NHL coach, first female NHL full-time coach, Jessica Campbell. Where'd she come from? Saskatchewan. There are so many greater names than mine. But what I find from growing up in that southern Saskatchewan area, the things people talked about, grit, hard work. In the summer, my summer job that my mom and dad would tell me to go do, and I'd want to go do, is working in the oil patch, right? Being 16 years old, taking a job that a lot of people probably take in their 20s and 30s to help pay for your college and school, that helps change you. Right. And then just, the community, our province, Saskatchewan, Telemiracle, how that community comes together to go help. The way that down in southern Saskatchewan, individuals will come even ahead of government to say, hey, there's a need. There's usually an answer to fund that need within about 2 or 3 sentences or an idea. And so I am who I am because I came from Estevan, and I can talk a little bit more about that journey and why I think Estevan is successful. But just thanks for having me here today.
Yeah. And what I actually want to know is, it's interesting the timing in which you're coming back and this particular moment in which Estevan finds itself. And so I think our first 3 guests kind of outlined that so well. But from your perspective, to come back at a time when there's a innovation, disruption, transition, all those, whatever word you choose, what is the message that you want to bring to people in this particular moment?
A few of them. One, just tech is getting older. We talk about new and exciting things from tech, but the whole software industry is getting older. It's like the web is old enough to run for prime minister. Software as a service, those services that we go use, they could run for Senate. The iPhone is old enough to vote. And so if you think about technology and what's happening, we always like to talk about hype cycles and AI and things like that. But I look at different software companies and what's going to happen. I think there's going to be big tech companies, but we talk about Microsoft, Google, Amazon, right? I think software companies are going to consolidate a lot into those big companies. But the opportunity, I think, where you're going to really see that growth is the cottage industry. Small teams, cash flow positive. It doesn't take a lot of money to start a software company. It's a laptop. It does not cost very much money at all to start a software company. It's a laptop, one individual or two. The cloud computing, the resources of I had to move back in 97 to get my start in tech. My parents, it was a sad day, it was a proud day that I was moving to the United States. That's not the pattern. The pattern today that you want to follow is be a small company to start up. In that small company, they can get the cloud computing resources from one of the big companies, usually for free if you're a startup or a small business. Andrew talked about tech and LinkedIn learning. You can learn now wherever you go. We used to have to drive to Regina for 2 hours to pick up a book for me to go learn, and I'd be a prized possession for the longest time. There was no web. There was just cold Saskatchewan winters. And if you look at the changes that are having in tech companies, it's going to be tech applied. It's going to be tech integrated. And so if you look at communities like Southeast Saskatchewan, they know more about ag tech than anybody in those other major centers. Mm-hmm. They know, if you look at how the changing of coal, gas, you name it, those are technology problems too. They're community problems, right? Saskatchewan, people learn together. People solve problems together as a community. And if you take those 2 things, domain expertise, right? The ability of from ag tech or you name it, how are they going to go apply technology to a problem, a solution, right? That's where the difference is going to be made in those individuals. And so don't look at me in some ways, hey, I went to Microsoft or I worked at Twitter or those other companies. No, I'm the anti-pattern. My parents were sad. I moved away. I got to go away for 20 years and I'm going to tell a lot of great stories at the tech conference about some of that, of what I learned. You can start the next great thing wherever you are. You can go learn the next great thing wherever you are. You do not have to move the country, build it in Estevan, build it wherever you are in the province. And it will be not an export of talent. It'll be an export of technology for the province.
So what are some of the stories that you're going to share at the conference? What's one you could share with us that might illuminate or give us some learning?
A lot of it was I've been really lucky to be in a lot of rooms, and I'd say the thing is there was a lot of people that looked out at me early on when I came at Microsoft. When I started Microsoft in 1997, my job was answering the phone, literally in a support cube, answering developer questions. In that time, I was at the company for well over a decade and shipped many of the products that we've been around. I'll talk a bit about when I left that company. I left Microsoft after about a decade and something and moved to Silicon Valley. And a lot of people will think about one world in tech. That was kind of unprecedented because I was new an ecosystem of Microsoft. And then I moved to Silicon Valley at the time when it was the iPhone and really that hot time of new apps and Twitter. And so I'm going to talk a bit about those changes, those transition. In Estevan, there's a famous type of event that happens, which is kind of these hockey events where the hockey players come back for the NHL. And they're super fun. They go up and they tell stories, and they're all fun, and they're kind of behind the scenes. What we're going to try and do is bring a bit of that spirit with John Gormley and I to the evening. So I'll talk about it. There's a story that I did in Saskatchewan where we told the story where I talked about when I left Microsoft. And I had a boss at the time that looked at me when I was leaving the company and said, "I'm glad you're leaving. I'm glad you're leaving. You don't have a career here. You should go off to Twitter. You should go work at that social network. I'm sure that's going to be great." And he says, "You just don't have a brain to have my job," is what he was telling me. It was corporate vice president there. And there's only about 120 at Microsoft. A number of years later, I was recruited back by a new CEO named Satya and leaned in on a new job, spent about 6-7 years there, and I became a corporate VP. Actually, I ended up inheriting a number of his different teams, and we're good friends now and laugh about it, that conversation. Maybe he was right then, because I had to go off and go learn. I had to go off and learn a few new things and spend some time doing that. But I'll tell you, I'm not afraid to go learn. Because, my hardest day in tech is nowhere near anything that's going on in the province today. I was just talking to Jason LeBlanc, a good friend of mine in the area. He's out in the field harvesting. If you go look at the people that are out, driving to their jobs in the oil patch, going out and doing that, those are real hard, difficult, challenging jobs.
And I want to know,
sit in front of Zoom calls in a day.
Yeah, me too, as I am right now. But I am wondering how different the transition is for people in Estevan, because you've listed a lot of things, and even thinking about how Twitter has evolved, and there's even kind of been a disruption to social media in many ways. And so, just again, the number of industries that are seeing change, change is always happening, but there are disruptions that are bigger. What is unique about Estevan, and is that transition more difficult for the people who work in the energy sector in Estevan than other sectors?
So, first of all, as someone who may have worked in the oil patch, who am I to say about how hard somebody's journey is in Estevan? I've lived a really blessed life. I look at the things that are around you in the town, and if Estevan, any community or any individual, if you can believe your story and you can believe that of what you can go do, you can do anything. If you start telling yourself you can't do something, you've already decided. And what I've seen in Estevan, and it'll be other communities like that, is that persistence. I'd say, look, being the energy capital has had a concentration of talent and energy and distribution, I think that brings to it. But what I think more than anything in tech, if anything, it's community. There's a famous saying about technology problems, engineering problems that we say in software companies. All engineering problems are people problems. They're not usually a technical problem. One of the things that I do in companies that I'm in there is I'm a fixer, and I get brought in on different teams, and they would get moved to me just to go fix them. 9 times out of 10, it isn't that there's some physics problem that has not been solved, or we have, various things like that. It turns out it's people not wanting to talk, people not wanting to communicate, and frankly, people not listening to each other. And so I said, what I believe for towns like Estevan is that they've been through strife. We talk about oil and gas, how it can be boom and bust. Tech can be that way as well too, right? But you go look at those, working through those cycles, and the ability to adapt and change is going to be what the success is of Estevan. What it's going to come down to, though, is also hearing about those possibilities, maybe not letting the negativity come through and let that go through, because I think that really helps. If you're negative, you're not going to go do it. I think the thing that happens, just lastly, with technology and the opportunity, it is going to be about how it is applied. It is going to be about how, there's going to be limited numbers of just net new things that are built due to the age of our industry. It's going to be how tech is applied, right? AI is not going to take away your job as in radio. AI is just solving a math problem. What it's going to do is hopefully make your job easier so that you can write maybe scripts better, or you can find information faster on people. Yeah. And so it's going to be, how do you leverage that to be successful? How do you think back and not forget? I'll tell you, I'll be honest, there's been times in meetings. I was in a meeting one time with Bill Gates, and he was pretty rough on somebody. In fact, it was a kind of famous moment where he asked somebody after they said something not that bright and said, "What college did you go to?" And they responded, and he said, "Great, can we please be sure never to ever hire from anybody from that university ever again? Because that is the stupidest," and there was an expletive, "thing that I've ever heard." I've had hard bosses before. My first hard bosses were in the oil patch. I think ways, and we've evolved probably in how we work with people. I remember one time an old boss looking at me and said, "Why did they put you on my crew? You have no arms, no strength. You're going back to school in September. I wanted somebody full-time." And so in that moment, you think about, how do you make it through it? I don't want to get sent home from the day and have all my friends laugh at me that I couldn't make it in the patch. Seriously, though, I don't think I could make it in the patch year and year what people do. So anyway, it is really, we keep on talking about grit and energy, but it's attitude, it's positive energy, and then it's applying tech to your industry. This is going to be key.
There's been many takeaways for me. I think whether you live in Estevan or not, this has been a really wonderful conversation, and we're running out of time. So Jeff, I'm going to thank you for being part of the show today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then thanks to Tanya and Andrew. Big thanks to you guys. And then, Gord, I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. What do you hope comes out of this conference?
Ooh, what do I hope? Oh, wow. I'd
30
love
seconds.
30 seconds. I'm so
or like
sorry.
Brett, 20, 15.
I want to see more technology, energy, agriculture, and technology, software. I'd like to see more people within Estevan creating new technology businesses. I'd love to see more people from outside of Estevan and Canada moving to Estevan. We have a lot to offer. And I want to see Estevan in 10 years, 20,000 people, not 10.
It's been great talking to you. Gordon, thank you for all of this.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone. So that last voice there was Gordon Moore, Executive Director of the Southeast Tech Hub. I'm Leisha Gravinsky. You've been listening to Blue Sky here on CBC Radio 1, 94.1 FM in Saskatoon, 102.5 FM in Regina, 540 on the AM dial if you're listening from a place like Estevan. You can also find us on demand. If you missed the show, you can head to the CBC Listen app and find any one of our programs to listen when you want. Have a great afternoon. We're back again tomorrow.